Hey guys, it's been a while, I know. Zach and I have been busy trying to get a business together. Nothing real successful at the moment, but with all the woodworking tools left behind from our Uncle Bob, we decided to cut and deliver wood. The thing in the basement's been quiet. Now and then we hear it shuffling around, and I think it's been eating pickles that have been down there for decades. Neither of us have been able to bring ourselves to go down and deal with it. We called the sheriff's station and they came by to check it out, but said we would have to get a hold of animal control. We had a guy come by and he actually went down. We tried our best to warn him that it wasn't just a feral raccoon, but he said it's nothing he hasn't dealt with before. There was screaming, then silence. I tried the sheriff again, but he told me it's not his jurisdiction. A tow truck came and took the man's truck, and that was that. We don't know what to make of it, but it hasn't tried to escape or hurt us, and it's made a nice little home down there. Let sleeping dogs lie is what Uncle Bob has to say on the matter. Oh, right. Uncle Bob's ghost is still here. There isn't a fixed schedule on when he'll show up or how long he stays. We've just sort of accepted it. We were out in the woodshed playing pool when we decided to spark another doob. Zach was about to take his turn when from behind him we heard a quick voice yell, "Don't miss!" He jumped, wildly missing the cue ball. There was a short burst of Bob's signature chuckle that sounded more like someone getting ready to hawk a loogie. "You boys are still here, eh?" "Uncle Bob?" I shuddered in disbelief. "Hey, what's got you by the nuts, boy? You look spooked." "You're dead, Bob," Zach said flatly. "Oh, you guys and your jokes. I'll admit, I keep on waking up out of salts, but I ain't dead. Keep trying to go out of town, but I can't get my car to start." We talked for a little while after that. We tried to avoid the fact that he was dead. Seemed to be a real sore spot for him. He doesn't know much about time anymore. Apparently the road is blocked off at a certain point for him. We don't know why he's sticking around. We got him to go down to the basement and check on the ghoul situation for us. The control officer's body parts are everywhere, and I was right about the pickles. Of course, now the pickles it ate have been replaced with chunks of bloody meat. We listened to the radio for a while. He was shaky, but Bob was able to pick up a pool stick and play with us. He was still good, too. When he was alive, he could destroy us left-handed without us ever even getting a turn. Death hasn't taken away from that. That weird radio station took control again as we played. "Welcome. The current time is 4:35 p.m. Temperature is 42 degrees. Rainy skies. A reminder, residents, if you see the homeless man, do not give him money or turn your back on him. There has been a disappearances of kites lately. There will be a bake sale at the train station on Monday. We urge you not to try number 6's pies. Like golf? The city of Strong is opening a new golf course, courtesy of the Knights of Columbus. Please come and enjoy yourselves. If you visit a loved one in a care center, know they are in good hands. Do not attempt to engage the creatures that run the center. They only want what's best for residents, at the cost of some MSH, of course. We all look forward to the summer to come here in Phillips. This has been your local report. Goodbye." "What the hell is up with that?" I asked, looking at Bob's transparent form. He was just as perplexed as I was. Apparently, him and his friend Leo had gone walking through the mountain woods behind the house on a number of occasions with a radio signal finder. They would get close, and then it would be further away, like it was moving. They never were able to find out themselves. Uncle Bob started talking about how he ought to go visit Gramma when the roadblock gets cleared, then started to fade out. It was like how fog dissipates after the sun comes out, and then he was gone. It was about 3:40 in the afternoon by the time we went inside. We were about to heat up some chicken tenders when Zach spoke up. "Hey, you know we've been up here a while now and haven't once gone to see Gramma. We should go." I looked at him and shuddered at the thought. Don't get me wrong, I love her and would love to pop in and say hey, but there's something about the geriatric I could never get past. It's a lot like my fear of E.T. the extraterrestrial. Stupid, but necessary. I don't know, man. Can't you, go get her and bring her here? Matt, you know that's not how senior centers work. Come on, we'll go for a little bit, have a nice visit, and after that we can get some pizza from your girlfriend. This prospect was certainly more appealing to me. Fine, but I swear to God, if I get any sort of bodily liquid on me or touched, I will never go anywhere with you again. Ha ha, that a boy, he said, giving me a pat on the back, much harder than he realized. We drove on down to Phillips, passing the cemetery along the way. Any evidence of our shenanigans from the other week were now gone, and it was just a normal graveyard once again. We eventually got onto the main road and found our way to the large black building. Man, I never would have guessed this was an old folks' home, Zach said in awe. He was twisting his dreads, obviously deep in thought. You know, I still think it's weird. This parking lot was always empty, and they got that fenced-in field over on the other end that no one ever seems to use for anything. Well, they're old. I mean, what kind of activities do you think they're going to be doing? I asked, getting out and slamming the door shut. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure some of them can play soccer or walk track, he said, following me to the door. There's a reason they don't have the Grandma Olympics, Zach. For God's sakes, these people are tired and just want to live out their lives as peacefully as possible. Not unless, and stay with me here, they're ninja vampires. From a very young age, Zach's imagination was pretty off the rails. And it wasn't the first time I had heard his theory on the place. No, just no. I don't want to hear about your ninja vampire theories, and I don't want anyone else there hearing about them either. Do you understand? But no, not one word. These people just want to go in peace, not to be riled up in your stories. You'll understand when you're in one yourself. I'll die before I go to one of those places, with a beer in one hand and a boob in my other. No Jackie Chan pyres getting me. I just shook my head. Zach still has women problems. Of course, it's been the opposite up here. Hookers are not easy to come by, and the virtue of the girls in town is a lot higher than he's used to. The toll it's taking was evident. The other night I saw him go into the bathroom with an empty Mrs. Butterworth bottle. Poor bastard. I parked the truck in the empty parking lot and we walked up to the door. I took a deep breath to steel myself. You gonna be okay, Maddie? Zach asked. He knew full well of my anxiety. Yeah, let's just get this done. He pulled open the door for me, and I felt like I was being trapped. The smell was as expected. Something between Febreze and human feces. There were elderly people scattered around in wheelchairs, staring at nothing in particular. I did my best to ignore them as we made our way to the desk. The guy sitting there was a weasel of a man. His long hair was slick with grease. Pimples of all stages dotted his blotchy skin, and he was constantly trying to stop snot from escaping his nose. He was too occupied with the book he was reading, which was upside down, to notice us come in. Zach walked over and knocked loudly on the desk. The man jerked in surprise and dropped his book. An issue of Papa Bear's Monthly slipped out from behind the book. I won't go into detail what that was about. He looked up at us, adjusting his glasses, and stared at us for longer than necessary. "Can I help you, men?" he asked us. Maybe. We're actually Daisy's grandsons. Daisy Redhill, we were hoping we could see her for a bit," I asked in my best polite voice. "Yeah, just tell us which room and we'll be on our way, Monroe," chimed in Zach. I found out later that was an old Mad Magazine reference. So random. "Well, I suppose you can visit for a little while. She's due for a blood test soon, so not for very long." He stood up, looking goofier than I first thought. His pant legs ended halfway down his calves, and the tops of them were so low they didn't even come close to touching his button-up shirt. There were sturdy-looking doors on both sides of the hall, though I couldn't see through the gated windows. "The door has a lock with a passcode. The number is 3548. Your grandma is in room 114. Please keep it short. Man, he said with another rub of his wet nose. A pimple burst that time, sliding a line of pus along his palm. I was tempted to throw up in that moment and was unable to warn Zach as he thanked him and shook the abomination. That kid is way too trusting. After the man took his leave, I told Zach not to touch me, or anything else between here and home. I figured it would be like hotel rules, with the numbers going off both sides of the hall, and I was right to a point. However, they were broken up with random rooms like the cafeteria and the rec room. As we came to turn in the hall, my heart stopped. Around the other way from the corner came a woman that had to be well over 90. Yet, even so, she walked remarkably well. Her eyes met mine and lit up. She smiled as wide as she possibly could, and her arms came up as she began her slow shamble towards me. Zach, I'm freaking out, man. She's coming. Look, just calm down, dude. You're like 1,000,000 times stronger than her, right? You can do this. I nodded, taking cover behind Zach as we walked toward her. We were close, and then she opened up her robe. What remained of her ancient breasts were in full view, and I wanted to cry. She wrapped her arms around Zach, and I finally lost it. I left him and took off down the turn. I almost slammed into a nurse pushing an elderly man and continued running. I didn't stop until I found the door marked 114. Grandma shot out of bed, spooked by my sudden intrusion. The room itself was just as depressing as the rest of the building. Shortly after, Zach walked into the room. His face was covered in a light shade of lipstick, and he had the biggest grin on his face. "Hi, Grandma," I said as slow and clearly as I could. She flashed a toothless, unsure grin up at us, and I wasn't really sure if she knew who I was. The fear was beginning to set in. I wasn't sure what else I should do now, but luckily Zach came to the rescue once again. "Grandma Daisy," he said, going up to her and giving her a big hug. I shuddered at the thought, but smiled along. "Zachary." Her voice was low, but in good spirits. "Is that your brother over there?" Her eyes began to show clarity, and I smiled back at her. "Yeah, Grandma, it's me." She opened her arms for me to hug her as well. The prospect made me unsettled, but I still loved her and couldn't refuse. Her frail arms wrapped around me, and the scent of mint wafted off of her. I closed my eyes and got it over with. "I'm so glad you boys came to visit. I probably don't got much time left. Your Uncle Bob's death reminded me of that." "Of course. We're sorry we haven't been by in so long. We just had a lot going on in our lives," Zach explained. "Oh, don't you go worrying about that. You boys have had it awful hard with your parents dying so young. All that matters is you're here now. Matthew, come over here." I took Zach's place on the bed next to her. She fiddled around with her watch. To our surprise, the face popped up and she removed a small medallion. On it was a red-colored hill in the shade of a setting sun. I had seen this before, but I couldn't remember where. "This belonged to your grandfather. It's our family symbol, and it is wicked important you keep it with you. Things haven't been right with the surrounding land for some time, long before you or me were born and long after we're dead. Now that you're adults, it will be your job to protect this area from all that will see it born. Promise me you boys will do this for me," she said, putting her medallion in my hand and squeezing it shut. I looked to Zach, and we both nodded to each other. "Sure, Grandma, we got things under control." "Oh, my boys, you do your family proud," she said, taking my hand to her lips. "So, do I get a cool pendant like Matt?" Zach asked. I could tell he was trying not to sound rude. "Of course you do. Didn't you get it from your Uncle Bob at his funeral?" No, not exactly. and his body kinda got eaten by a ghoul monster.
What? You mean you ain't got it? Well, you better go find it. That there's one of the keys protecting this town.
Just as I was about to explain the situation, there was a knock at the door. We turned to see Serena holding a small cardboard box.
Hey guys, I brought your breadsticks.
Breadsticks! Yelled Zach, his dreads flopping happily all over the place.
Breadsticks!
Grandma mirrored behind me. She was clearly in the mood for takeout. It was obvious where he got it from.
Hi, Daisy,
Serena said slowly.
I'm Serena. Do you remember me? Oh, Serena, of course I do. Come over here and give me a hug, dear.
She went over, and I admired how old bodies didn't affect her. We all began to talk about our days in the past when the same disgusting guy from the front opened the door.
Excuse me, men. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up. It's almost time for Daisy's treatment, and we wouldn't want to keep them waiting, would we?
The thought hit me, and I made it a point to tell Serena to make sure she washed her hands after she got back.
Oh, if we gotta, promise me you boys will come visit again soon. And you too, sweetheart,
she said, looking over at Serena.
You got it, Grandma. It was great to see you again. We love you,
Zach yelled as we began to mill back out the room and down the hall. The thought of talking to Melvin made me physically ill, but I just had to know. You said she was getting a treatment. What for? He sucked up a line of snot from his upper lip, then wiped his hand across it.
Well, sir, she has a form of pituitary cancer. It's nothing serious. She just needs to have a little something removed once in a while. Completely painless, I assure you.
What? I asked more to myself, but Zach was pulling me back outside. That didn't make any sense. If she has cancer, then why not just remove it completely? I pondered this some more as Serena said her goodbyes and made her way to her vehicle. Zach and I walked over to our truck and stopped in our tracks. On the driver's side of the ground was the same white-haired homeless man we ran into before. He was crouched in his stained underwear like an animal. He looked up to us, and his wrinkled eyes bored deep into mine. A hideous grin formed, revealing white teeth, which were all there now. The previous missing ones seemed to have just grown back. A large fart escaped the man as he cackled and reached in. I was ready to dive behind the truck, but he slapped the brown mess to the ground and formed a circle around himself. He hopped out with way more grace than a man in heels should be capable of, and formed an arrow pointing up with a circle around it. I understood what it was now. Our family symbol. We both stared on as he began to scamper off on all fours. Seriously, why? I asked in complete disbelief. I knew there would be no answer, but the whole thing was just mind-boggling. At least he didn't throw it at you this time. He didn't even bite you either. That's true. To be honest, I'm really surprised my hand's not infected. So what now? Zach asked. Well, we did our good deed for the day. I suppose we just go home and see if Bob's around. I could go for a drink. Hell yeah, dude, I'm with you there. I was a few seconds away from turning around when I heard it. A rapid tapping coming from behind me like that of a dog. It was quickly closing the gap. Matt, behind you! Zach yelled, but it was too late. I could feel the musty breath of the old man on my ear as his arms wrapped around mine and legs locked firmly around my waist.
You think your grandma's safe in there, boy? No. They're gonna jam a nice long needle into her skull again and again until it's all dried up. Then they'll rip it out of her. They inject you with it when you're born and rip it out when you're old and worn. 80 years it takes to grow, and then in there the creature's so. They're gonna cut her up real good. Don't believe me? Check the clinic records.
He whispered into my ear. His tongue slid out and caressed the top. Get the fuck off him, Gollum! Yelled Zach. He ran over, but before he could get his hands on him, the bum reared his head back and took a chunk of skin out of my shoulder. God, really? The first time wasn't enough! I yelled as I turned. He leapt off me and, with a gymnastic finesse, did a handful of backflips towards the hedges on the side of the building. Zach ran to beat the rest of the crap out of him, but with the final leap, he disappeared into the shrubs. He looked around but came up empty-handed. I could feel the trickle of blood as it pumped down my back. How bad is it, man? Zach walked over and inspected it for a moment. It got you good, he said with a chuckle.
This funny to you? Why am I the only one? You're bigger than me. You've more meat on you.
Guess I'm just not that sweet. Honestly, we should probably go to the hospital this time. Pretty sure that's gonna need stitches. We switched places and he drove to the clinic. For such a small town, there was a long line ahead of me for the emergency room. It would seem the townsfolk had issues of their own. After an hour of agonizing pain, it was finally my turn. We were brought into an examination room and the nurse helped me pull my shirt off. Mr. Redhill, you wouldn't be related to Bobby Redhill, would you? Yeah, that's our uncle. Oh wow, small world. Sorry about his passing. It's fine, just fix my shoulder, please. I gave her a quick overview of how it happened, and she didn't even seem fazed by the strange news. She asked me a few questions, but only seemed interested that I never had a PR-35 vaccination. I never heard of such a thing, but apparently it's a local thing for all babies in the area. Okay, I'll go let the doctor know and he'll be in a few minutes. She barely walked out when Zach spoke up. Matt, did you hear that? They inject you when you're born. It's like the crazy old cannibal said. Oh, please don't start. I just want to get sewn up, get my rabies shot, and go home. Oh, you will. But first, I gotta take an investigational bathroom break, he said with the tone of an old sleuth. Dude, don't. Do you really think Grandma's in danger? She's been in there for a few years now. In a typical Zach fashion, he ignored me and was already slipping out the door. I don't know how a guy so big thinks he can be sneaky in the least. I sat in silence, reflecting my life choices, and finally the doctor came in. She injected a numbing agent around the bite mark and stitched the hole back together. It felt tight, but better. She gave me a few boosters as well, which I was grateful for. I don't know if she knew my brother was here or not, but she took her leave well before he slinked his way back in. Look at us, man! He practically screamed, running over with a pile of papers flapping in his hand. I didn't have to look on my own, however, as he proceeded to spell everything out to me. Okay, I don't know what a PR-35 is exactly, but it's some kind of growth hormone that's injected directly into the brain. There's a whole list of people's names from town, including Uncle Bob's and Grandma's. It's like this thing overdevelops the pituitary gland, and I guess they extract fluid from it when it's ripe, he said, holding them up to me. So what? Doesn't mean it's some sort of brain harvesting conspiracy. But that's the thing. The director of the hospital is the same director as the old folks' home, and of all ages that are circled on here are 80 years old. Grandma is circled. I felt my stomach drop. I knew he was right. Maybe there weren't creatures feeding off people, but there was something wrong here. All right, maybe we can arrange to get her out of there and back at the house. Ha! I fucking doubt it. We're gonna have to go on a rampage. Zach was too excited to talk down. He must have found a candy machine somewhere. To the Redhill mobile! He yelled and proceeded to rush through the clinic. I followed, trying to avoid the looks from everyone around. He pulled out of the parking lot and squealed the tires down the road. The drive back to the old folks' home was a quiet one on my part. I could tell how excited Zach was as he seemed to bounce in his seat with a grin like that of a beast. Listen, Zach, I know how pumped up you are about this, but we can't just run in there and start dismembering people. You will go to jail and probably take me with you. Come on, Matt. You really think that's what I plan on doing? They'd need to be people to do that. Think of all the times our lives got screwed up. We've only been here for what, a couple weeks? I know there's a lot of messed up shit going on here, but these people aren't vampires. Jeez, of course they're not. They're not feeding on the blood of the living. They're feeding off the brain liquid of the nearly dead. Grampires! I laughed hard at this, then forced myself to be serious. Zach parked a quarter of a mile away behind a brick building. As I said, we've been doing a lot of tree cutting the past week or so, and kept our tools in the bed of the truck. We got out and he immediately pulled out the hatchet. My common sense was screaming at me to beat his ass and take us home, but I knew something wasn't right with this place. And if our grandma was in danger, I wasn't going to take the chance. I pulled out the machete we used for smaller branches. "Just promise me you won't go psycho until we know what's going on, please?" I asked, looking over to him. He nodded, but I could tell he was a powder keg. "You usually know what's best, but if shit goes down, I'm showing them no mercy." "That's fine. If it seems like we or Grandma is in danger, you have my permission to take out as many bedpan pyres as you want." I was never as funny as him, and it was these moments that defined that. The sun came down in the parking lot, and much like before, it was still empty. Everything felt wrong, including the sound of Zach humming the Terminator theme beside me. I sighed and walked towards the door. Zach stopped me. "That's what they're going to expect. Let's find another way in." If we were carrying weapons into a senior center, we might as well add breaking and entering to the list too. We slipped around the side, and window by window we looked for another point of entry. Each had a resident in them, and to my horror, the woman who flashed me earlier was in front of my face. I dug my fingernails into my palms, nearly breaking the skin. It was all I could do not to scream. Eventually we found Grandma's room. We opened the window and Zach pushed me up through it and pulled himself in after. The bed in the room itself was empty. "See? I told you! They got Grandma!"
Shh! Be quiet, you bonehead!
"We'll find her, we just gotta look around." "You don't be quiet on the rampage! That's our Grandma, dude!" He proceeded to kick open the door to the hallway, which was dark and quiet. I assumed everyone must have been in bed already. He ran down the hall to the front, and I followed after him where a man wearing a dark turtleneck and pants stepped around the corner. He was obviously a different front man, as his name read Satoshi. "Who are you?" he demanded. "We're the guy that's gonna kick your ass!" Zach roared back. I began to feel regret creep in, and that was quickly ended when the man in front of us began to visibly change. His skin stretched around thick cords of muscle, and veins began popping out all over. His teeth became longer, and his now yellow eyes bulged out of his skull. Long nails pushed through the fingers, and perhaps worst of all, squelch. Zach just slammed the hatchet into the thing's shoulder. It screamed in pain as it backflipped towards the front door and proceeded to pull the tool out of its skin, dropping it with a clang to the floor. Blue blood shot out in spurts from the slit all over the floor that instantly made the smell of bad cabbage fill the room. "You see? I fucking told you! Ninja vampires!" he yelled to me. Zach made to charge again, but he was grabbed by his throat and slammed hard into the wall. Plaster caved in around his form as he tried and failed to punch the thing in the chest. "You didn't even wait till I was done! How rude!" it bellowed in a deep, gruff voice. "I don't know what you mean by breaking in here with these weapons, but I'm going to make sure you don't hurt anyone again." The creature's muscles coiled and tightened as he reeled his clawed hand back. Just before he was able to send it through Zach's face, I swung the machete into the back of its neck, bringing a blue shower of bad-smelling blood across the both of us. "Rampage!" I yelled as I brought the blade down again and again, until finally the monster's head dropped to the ground, his body with it. Zach gulped in as much air as he could, the red handprint already visible around his neck. He was going to have a bruise tomorrow. "You know, I really hate it when you're right," I said, clapping my hand on his arm. "Keeps you humble," he croaked out. "Let's go find her." We started our way down the hall when all the doors began opening. Despair made its way into my gut as I assumed more of them would be coming at us. It was just as bad. In droves, the elderly popped out of their rooms and began to slowly shuffle their way toward us. I raised my machete, but Zach stopped me. "Just chill, man. These are normal people, just like you and me. You don't want to hurt them." I reluctantly agreed,
but had to keep a scream from ripping out of my throat as the old woman from earlier popped out of the mob and began to lead the pack. I raised my machete once more, but Zack simply stepped up and pulled a large joint out of his pocket. He lit it and blew the smoke towards the woman's face as he came into reach. The group of old folks stopped for a moment, and all began to smile. It was deeply unsettling to me, but with that, he threw the joint off to the side behind us, where the group proceeded to follow, the old woman stopping to kiss him deeply. "Oh God, this is fucked," I said, standing there in the ridiculous situation that was unfolding around me. It only went from weird to worse when a blue transparent figure walked out through the walls. It was Uncle Bob. "Is smoking pot all you boys do? I swear I was just sitting down to have myself a beer." He looked around the hallway and saw the old folks now passing the blunt around. "Sally Vermont, is that you?" he said, walking over to the circle. For God's sakes, of course he knew them. They were all probably classmates. "Well, I guess we know what keeps bringing Uncle Bob around," Zack said, smacking my shoulder. "Dude!" I jumped in pain and proceeded to punch him in the shoulder. Sorry, I forgot. Well, everyone's distracted. Let's go find Grandma Daisy." He grabbed his hatchet and we began walking further down the hall, looking around from door to door. Finally, we came upon a door that led down to the basement. "All right, man, moment of truth. Ready for the boss battle?" he asked. "This isn't it. Not yet, anyway. If there was, there would be a save point of some kind." "Well, I guess we're gonna find out, aren't we?" He proceeded to kick the door that was already open into the wall. "Rampage!" he yelled down the dark steps. At the bottom was a locked door with a keypad on the side. "Damn it! Now what are we gonna do?" I yelled, giving it a firm kick. "Well, there's nothing we can do. We're just gonna have to go back home." "Or not!" he yelled, slamming the hatchet into the keypad. Apparently that was the right combination, because what was left of it turned blue and the door audibly unlocked. We slowly went inside, where we were greeted by a large, expensively decorated office. The colorful carpet was vibrant, and along the walls were crystal figures, jeweled weapons, and masterfully painted works of art. Everything looked priceless. At the desk, the chair slowly turned, and the disgusting little man brought his gaze upon us. He slowly clapped and rose to meet us. "So you men have somehow managed to make it down here. How unfortunate for you." "See? Told you. Boss," Zack whispered to me. "I see you are overwhelmed. Please have a seat. I'm sure we can work something out. I'm just trying not to throw up all over this fancy rug. Your face is offensive and should be banned from countries," I told him. Zack rose the hatchet to the man's eye level. "Tell us where our grandma is, or it's gonna get real messy." I could tell he was serious. He was giving off a fierceness that even I was getting nervous of. We fought a number of times as kids, but luckily I've never had to be on the receiving end of that. The man didn't give off the slightest hint of being intimidated, though. In fact, he began to laugh. "You fools! You think you can stop us? We are stronger and smarter than you men will ever be. We've lived in these mountains feeding off of your kind since the beginning, and will be long after. But consider this. The hormones we inject into these people are from us. It gives them better mental clarity, a stronger body, fights off the aging process, giving them a longer natural life, and we are diligent in our jobs of taking care of them." "Yeah, at the cost of sucking them dry," he yelled back. "By taking the fluid secreted by the gland, we also take away their fears and sadness. Don't you see what I am telling you here? They live happy, long lives with us, while ungrateful brats like you leave them here to rot." "Listen, dude, we're gonna tell you for the last time. We don't give a shit what you're selling. You're gonna give us our grandma, or we're gonna cut the face from your head," I said, stepping closer. He let out a long sigh and looked down to his feet. "Very well. If that is how you feel, I will show you to your graves," he said, voices getting much deeper as the muscles in his limbs exploded from his clothes, leaving them in shreds.
I fucking told you again! Boss fight!
He yelled with an overzealous grin. The thing jumped toward us, swiping at Zach. I anticipated this and brought the machete blade down on his forearm. The thing's claws grazed across his stomach. The backside of his other hand smacked me in the face and I went hard against the wall, making my sight explode with colors. Zach and the creature tumbled around in a blur while I shook the stars from my head. Screams of rage and pain blurred, then finally separated as my focus returned. They both had a good number of wounds in them, and Zach no longer had his hatchet. The creature threw him against the desk, collapsing it to the ground and launched itself on top of him. Zach's hand struggled against the creature's own as it pushed its needle-like claws closer to his face. I shakily got to my knees and noticed a large amount of blood splash onto the floor in front of me. I was bleeding pretty bad, and the only thing I could do was throw him my machete, so I focused everything I had into his general direction. The blade went sailing over and stuck hard into the creature's side. It let out another scream roar and bucked back. Not wasting time, Zach ripped it out and shoved it underneath the creature's chin. Blue blood splashed all over my brother's face. It didn't bother him, though, as he gritted his teeth harder, shoving it farther in again and again. Finally, the thing's face just kinda hung limply to the side, and Zach rolled it off. He came over and helped me to my feet. Though the fight had only lasted maybe all of 5 minutes, I could see all the places those claws raked across his skin. We were both in pretty bad shape. Breathlessly, we both let out a resounding "Rampage," and dizzily made our way to the door behind the desk. A long, cool hallway made of concrete greeted us, and ended at a heavy iron door. Next to it lay a phone on a table. "Okay, I take it back. I like it when you're right sometimes," I said with a small chuckle. "That was just a mini-boss. There's your save point, and there's your boss door. Unfortunately, we don't get any do-overs." "Well, I guess. If we die saving Gramma. You ready?" I nodded, and we limped our way over to the imposing door. Zach slowly pushed it open to reveal some kind of lab. At the end, there was a glass window, and 2 men were inside with Gramma on a table. She was out cold with anesthesia, and there were needles laid out on a metal table. One of the men appeared to be simply an attendant, but not all that strong. Hopefully we wouldn't have to worry about him. The other man was large and imposing. Even from the heavy surgeon clothing he wore, I could see he was covered in tattoos. Zach was about to go in when I ducked us down below the window. "Wait until their backs are turned," I whispered. He nodded back to me as we peeked back through the glass.
Wie geht es Ihren Lebenspunkten? Normaler Arzt. Sehr gut. Sie gibt keinen Nektar mehr. Wir werden die Drüse extrahieren und den Körper entsorgen.
"I think they're speaking German. I'm guessing this guy's gonna be a badass. Don't screw up," I whispered. "You either. Their backs are turned. Get ready." The surgeon picked up a round tool from the table and clicked it on. It was a circular saw, one of those kind you see in the movies where they do an autopsy. Zach wasted no time and booted in the glass door, shattering the window into a million pieces. The assistant looked over with shock and Zach drove the hatchet firmly into his skull.
Wer bist du? Was bedeutet dieses Eindringen?
The doctor yelled. Before he could change, I gave him a swift kick to the kneecap, dropping him. The saw left his hand as he raised them in surrender and fell onto his thigh, making a large red cut through his gown. He screamed and relief washed over me. He was human. Zach was about to do him in, but I stopped him. We did what we came here to do. We needed to go now. Zach nodded, and with the last of his rage, he booted the doctor to the face and lifted Gramma from the table. We made a beeline for the exit, but were stopped along the way. The elderly residents were still around, talking to each other and Bob, but a staff of nurses made their way out to meet us and block our exit, a few of them beginning to change. "Looks like the end of the line, bro," I said, raising the machete. "Well, fuck. Get the last joint out of my pocket, would you? And let me use your lighter." The staff of several nurses hadn't closed in on us yet. I guess they were savoring the moment or something. Well, I did as Zach asked and poked it into his mouth. Pulling the lighter out of my pocket, the medallion Gramma gave me earlier rolled onto the floor in front of them, and they seemed to be scared of this. I dropped the lighter and ran over to pick it up. All I could think of was to brandish it in front of them like Silver to a werewolf, and slowly make our way past them. After a time, they actually retreated around us and back towards the basement. It was as if they decided to cut their losses and let us go. Whatever the case, we got the hell out of there and ran to the truck. We were both pretty banged up, but decided Zach should drive. My screws were still a little loose from wanging my head against the shelf, and I didn't want to take any chances with Gramma. The drive was quiet for a time. Then we noticed Gramma waking up. "What happened? Is the operation over?" she asked groggily. "Don't worry, Gramma. You're safe. Me and Zach rescued you." The fog finally began to melt from her brain as she looked around and realized she was in the truck. "Why am I here? I'm supposed to be getting my gland removed." "What?" Zach asked. "You knew about that?" "Well, of course I knew about that. I don't need it anymore." "They were gonna eat you, Gramma. We kicked their asses so bad. They ain't gonna mess with you or anyone for a long time," Zach replied. "What do you mean? What exactly did you do to them?" she asked in a low, angry tone. "Well, I mean, they were gonna kill you, Gramma, so we went in and took those monsters down." "You killed them? You ungrateful little bastards! They were gonna give me a longer life and you took it all away from me! The only monsters here are you two boneheads!" she screamed at the top of her voice. Then, all at once, she was silent. "We're sorry, Gramma. We just couldn't leave you in there with them, though. And look, you can live with me and Maddie now," said Zach with an upbeat tone. Grandma remained silent and unmoving. A thick, awkward moment of realization dawned on us. We both knew it. She was gone. Zach slammed the brakes and we looked her over. Her heart had stopped beating, and I immediately dialed for an ambulance. They came faster than I thought they would. Maybe a little under 10 minutes, but it was too late. There was nothing they could do for her. She had a heart attack and her last moments were spent yelling at us. There was no way we were ever going to get over that one. We left the hospital and began our tired drive home. The light in Uncle Bob's room was on. We slowly entered the house and sat at the table. A few moments went by and we lit up a doobie. Uncle Bob was already aware of what happened and he sat in silence with us. "Well, nothing to do but have a cold one, I suppose," he said, patting our backs. He walked over to the fridge in an attempt to cheer us up and turned invisible. "Ooh, they're from a haunted brewery," he bellowed, making his way over with a beer for each of us. We laughed and took one, taking a long, hard swig before finally talking again. "I'm glad we were able to at least see her one last time," Zach said with a sad smile. "Yeah, she was a feisty one. God love her though, she took care of us like no one else." "I know she's proud of you boys. And don't worry, she don't blame you none." "I just don't know why she was so angry about us busting her out of there. I mean, they've been injecting everyone with that crap, and we saved her from whatever they were gonna do to her." "Hey, 'cause you know, everyone agreed to it. Hell, I would have been in there myself if I hadn't bit the dust out early." "Wait, what? You knew?" "Everybody does. I mean, sure, you're subject to some strange things, but it don't really hurt no one none." "So all of that was just a waste of time?" "Well, fuck it. There's less monsters in the world now," Zach said bitterly. "Speaking of which, Grandma says something about a medallion I was supposed to get from your funeral. Any idea where it is?" "Oh yeah, in the gullet of that monster downstairs, I'd say. Sure as a crow flies." Bob took a swig of beer, and we watched it splash the stool and floor. "Don't worry. Someone will clean that up." She wrapped her arms around Zach, and I finally lost it.